Welcome to Triangle BNI, brought to you by Oak City Tech, which powers your goals with proven technologies for increasing traffic, leads, and sales. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Welcome back to Triangle BNI. Each week, we bring you a small business success story from Triangle BNI. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle in central North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. We have 30 chapters going strong. We have 6 core groups growing, looking forward to becoming full chapters, and almost 600 members in BNI that meet each week to help each other start and grow small businesses. And our guest for the week this week is Jeff Austin with the law office of Jeffrey L. Austin. Jeffrey L. Austin, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Mike.
We are glad to have you here today. Jeff is an estate planning attorney, elder law. We'll get into all of that because I know there's a number of things you do, and we want to make sure we touch all those. Jeff is also president of OpenEye BNI. They meet Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. at the Frontier. I hope I always get that right because that's one of my chapters as a consulting director. Here we are. We're starting off July, Jeff. I mean, we're halfway through the year. You as a business owner, a lawyer, and a dad, and we'll get to that too. It's like, oh, we're halfway through the year. How do we get here? So how's business been this year so far?
It's been good. I've been doing this this is my 6th year, and each year is an improvement on the last. And summer is a time that I reconsider and make my goals and look back at the past year because I find I've done my taxes, and so now I'm in fact going to use this month. It's a timely question to think about where do I want to be a year from now, and where have I been in the past year. So it's been good so far.
Is your industry in general seasonal?
Just that the end of the year, as maybe with many industries, is different from the rest of the year, and it's quiet, and people aren't thinking about getting wills and other things done in December.
Are you, because you've been a lawyer for quite a while, but you've had your own shingle out since June of 2014. Are you finding that we as the public are getting smarter and more proactive?
No, I haven't noticed that in my time.
Okay,
and,
fair enough.
I can understand that, but I try to work with people who are thinking along those lines.
It's hard. Some of the things you do, it either doesn't apply yet. I know it does to me because in the last, I lost my mom last year and my dad 6 years ago. And up until then, I would have never thought of all this stuff. Or we just don't want to deal with it. Right. And that's the tough part.
Right. Yeah. It's usually a life event like a death in the family or a marriage or a divorce, having children for the first time that prompts people to start thinking along the lines of the future and what they can do to prepare for that.
You are at times a family counselor too, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. I am an estate planning attorney, and I also do adult incompetency and adult guardianship proceedings, which means that I'm sometimes in the middle of essentially custody disputes of elderly people. And I think that they have the potential to be, or I know from experience, they have the potential to be every bit as personal and emotional and sometimes nasty as custody disputes of children.
And we as children, we never think we're going to get to that point with our parents.
Right. And I do what I can to keep it from getting that way. But a lot of it is, of course, grounded in the relationships that had been in place for years before I came into the picture.
And the other thing, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit, not quite at length, but just in passing, is that money changes everything, doesn't it?
It does. And sometimes it's not about the money too, but certainly money is a factor, and whether there's something to fight for. And then sometimes it's hurt feelings from childhood or 10 years ago or last year or whatever it may be. But it definitely has a potential to sometimes.
And I know it's tough when you have, like, I have an older sister and younger brother. So one way or the other, it was not going to be an even vote. There was going to be 2-1 one way or the other. Thankfully it wasn't, because there were no issues on ours. But when it's one sibling or one family member, it's just 1-1. It's got to be hard sometimes to referee that.
Yeah. And, part of what I do is dealing with estate administration too, and perhaps like your family situation, and working through what happens after someone has died. And when people are able to work together, it makes a big difference. So I find myself encouraging, when I do this work, I work with the executor of the estate, which maybe is one child among the 2 or among the 3 children. And I have a policy of transparency, and I know that when we let people know what's going on from the beginning, that will increase the trust and the cooperation on down the line when we need it later on.
So what drew you into this part of the legal world?
it took me a while to find this part of the legal world, and I hung up my shingle and was doing sort of anything that came through the door, like
Mhm.
many young in the law attorneys do. And I did a little bit of criminal law, a little bit of family law, child support, child custody issues, helped some small businesses. But I found that over time, a wider circle of friends and friends and friends of family were coming to me with something that they needed, that everybody needs, which is an estate plan and a will, powers of attorney, documents to let people make decisions for you when you're not able to make them for yourself. And I found that it was something that suited my strengths well. It was something I enjoyed doing, playing into supporting people and making difficult decisions and providing them counsel and advice on how to make those decisions. So it grew from there, and I over time realized that was what I did well and a part of law that suited me well, and so I've grown from there. Plus, if I may,
Yeah.
also the elder law part of what I do is working with elderly people and working on care for elderly people, whether it's guardianship or Medicaid planning and things like that. And some experiences in my family and making sure that my grandparents had a long decline down in Georgia, and my father and my aunt cooperated through many years of that and multiple many-hour trips down from North Carolina down to south of Atlanta, and putting them in a series of homes and making sure that they were comfortable and happy. And I know that demographically, it's a challenge our society is facing as our older population
Yeah.
grows, and so being a part of that solution was something that always appealed to me.
That's why, as we've done, we're coming up on a year on the show now, and there are starting to be a lot of common themes, and that's one of them is
Hmm.
there was a connection growing
Oh
up.
yeah,
Whether it's construct, John Devlin was on last week with Blue Ribbon Construction. His mom was in that field,
yeah.
and that's what he grew
Okay.
up knowing. So it makes sense then that you had seen that and thought, you know what, I can help people get through this
Yeah.
differently and or better, right?
Yeah. I'm a bit of an evangelist around planning for incompetency with powers of attorney, which are very simple documents, and it's uh, best to come to an attorney to do it, but it's better than not to find the standard templates online and do it if that's what you can do. But I remember first hearing the word of a power of attorney in law school, not from law school, but from what my parents were doing for my father and aunt were doing for my grandparents down in Georgia. And it's a simple document that lets somebody else make decisions for you when you're not able to make them for yourself. So it's something everyone should have. My wife and I had those, even though we're still young in our
Yeah.
lives.
It's like it's like insurance.
Yeah,
It I don't need it
yeah,
until I need it,
yeah,
right? So we're gonna get some of those stories. I know you have a really good story. If I remember right, it was your great-grandfather. He
yeah,
wrote your mom out.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that
My
because it's a second
grandfather, in
story,
fact. Yeah,
but it makes sense,
yeah,
and it probably made a lot of sense to him the way he was doing it too,
yeah.
but I want you to tell that, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes. We're here with Jeff Austin, law offices of Jeffrey L. Austin. He is in RD04. They meet Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. at the Frontier. If you are looking to visit a BNI chapter, which we would love for you to do, if you or someone you know is starting a business or looking to grow one, we'd love to have you come visit, just see what it's all about. You can go to trianglebni.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says Find a Chapter. If you click on that, Dropbox will show up, and you can click on part of town by city, day part by the day, however you want to sort through everything. And it will show you all the chapters on that day or in that area. And if you click on the individual chapters, it will show you the members listed so you can kind of get a feel for what kind of businesses are in there to see if that makes sense to you. If you've never been to a BNI meeting, each week there's a featured speaker. And in Jeff's group, every week it's 10 minutes to talk, and they are introduced through the member bio sheets. So, Jeff, that is how we do it here. So, we're going to start with our guest today, Jeff Austin, with the law office of Jeffrey L. Austin, elder law, state planning. We'll get into all those. There's a number of hats he wears, but that's type. You've been in business since 2014. There's
Yes.
an office located somewhere.
Office is in my home, so I'm a mobile attorney. I meet
Okay.
clients where they are in their homes, usually around Durham, but all around the Triangle.
And society's going there. I mean, we're
Yeah,
laughing yesterday. Oh yeah, it's my shameless plug about my grandson Oliver because I have to bring in at every show. But we'll get into that. It
okay,
actually does apply this week. So,
okay.
anyways, my son and I went to pick up lunch yesterday. We're talking about somehow we got onto detailing cars. He goes, Yeah, there's a guy that shows up to our office
Hmm.
and just he'll drive to the company there and detail all the cars. So
Oh, okay.
it would make sense that, when you go to people, it makes things a little
Hmm.
easier. And
I saw Yoshi as I was driving here. Yoshi,
oh
is
yeah,
this Yoshi you're talking about? But they
no,
also gas your car and clean your
oh
car.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But they'll come, they can change the oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's mobile.
Okay.
Any kind of mobile service is a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. We talk about families a lot, and family section part of the bio intro. So if you'll tell us a little bit about your wife and your family.
All right. I have a family. I have a wife, Kobe. We've been married since 2013.
And
And
I always ask, how did you meet? And you
okay.
both tell the story the same way.
I think we tell the story mostly the same way. It
That's
might
usually what I
it might
get.
diverge at one point. Um, we had a long lead up, I suppose. We met right after college down in Atlanta. We were working for a nonprofit, and so we workplace connection. But we were friends. She was dating somebody else, and we're just friends. And we both left the job, and she moved to a farm, started working at a farm in southern Georgia. And both actually lived in Africa, in different parts of Africa at the same time, and both ended up in grad school. And she was back in Atlanta at the Centers for Disease Control, and I moved back to Atlanta for law school and found each other again. I remember that I had met one of our mutual friends riding bicycles. I was riding home from law school from classes, and uh, tried to make so I said hello to our friend and tried to connect with her later, and we never did. But it was that friend who let Kobe know that I was in Atlanta when Kobe moved to town. So that was something I'm very grateful.
Okay.
If I'm speaking to a BNI audience, it's the power of networking,
It
right? Like I
is,
could
yeah.
have kept driving my bicycle, but that was what put my name in front of Kobe. And so she reached out, let me know she was back in town, and
How did
we
you two meet the first time?
we met in the workplace. I don't remember the
Okay.
very moment we met,
All
but
right.
we met
Okay.
working together. And
And where was the
yeah.
first date, and how long are we talking about between the time you met till you actually had
Okay,
it?
so we met in 2003. The first date was in 2011, 2010. Yeah.
Dang.
So we were
Carrying the
not in
torch for a
touch.
while.
Yeah, we were not in touch for some time, but I invited her over to ride bicycles on the new urban bike path around Atlanta, and we suggested we start by making pancakes at the house and have a long bike ride. She showed up with her roommate and like another friend of hers. So
Here's a buzzkill right
yeah,
there. Huh?
so it was later on, some weeks or days later, that I mentioned that my mother and I are both single people, and we let each other know when we're leaving or going out of town or something when we've arrived safely. And I think that made an impression. She thought it was maybe sweet, but also she says this is where the stories diverge.
Yeah,
That
okay.
that was the first moment she was very explicitly clear that I was available, whereas I thought I had made that pretty clear by inviting her on for breakfast
Yes,
and
yeah.
bicycle rides for some
Yeah.
time before
Okay.
that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on
Yeah,
that. It's like, wait, didn't you pick up? Yeah, so.
yeah,
And
just
by
by
the
reading
way,
the signals.
yeah, and to this day, when my wife and I go out of town, she has to text her mother that, okay, we're home. Because her
Right.
mother says,
Yeah.
now have a safe trip. Let me know when you're home.
Yeah.
So that goes on till you're 60.
Yeah, I still do it.
Older,
Even
so,
now,
yeah.
I'm not single.
Exactly. We do the same thing. So, and you have a little one at home.
We have two. We have a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son.
Okay.
And they're great. Bundle of fun.
And the game changes when the second one comes home, doesn't it?
Yes, we are mano a mano now.
Your man-to-man
Yeah,
defense
yeah.
used to be zone. Now
Yeah.
it's man-to-man,
Yeah.
and everything changed. You
Yeah.
had this. Wait, I thought you had this one. I got
Right. It requires a lot more communication
Oh,
between the
yes,
two of
yeah.
us about who's
Are
doing what.
are you seeing any similarities now that your 1-year-old with where your oldest
Yeah.
one was when daughter's oldest?
Daughter's older,
Okay.
yeah.
When she was 1, you seen any similarities with your son?
Similarities, but also differences. My 1-year-old, I don't really remember the month and time that
I'm with you,
that
yeah.
my 4-year-old
Yeah.
hit certain milestones, but my 1-year-old is finally interested in books, and he has a book of trucks, the picture book,
yeah.
a board book, and so I remember that about my daughter when she was younger, a lot of interest in books, but he's also a little bit more willful. He has opinions about what he should be doing and what he doesn't want to do, and yeah,
Does your daughter enjoy being a big sister?
yes.
Okay.
The pediatrician told us that children get jealous, but they take that jealousy out to the extent that they do on parents and not on the siblings. And that's been my
Oh.
experience. So,
Okay.
and I don't even know that jealousy is something we've dealt with for some time, but in the first 6 months, we could tell that she was aware of all the attention going somewhere away from her and let us know that. But she's consistently been sweet to him, except when he makes a lot of noise and she's trying to sleep. She hates that.
Okay.
And she lets us know that.
Is he okay having a third parent?
Yeah. They're sweet together.
Does she get on the floor and play with him?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
all right.
wonderful. I love watching that.
It's a blast
Yeah.
doing that. I remember when our oldest son, who's now he's gonna be 30, he's gonna be 33 here coming up. When he was born, my mother, who professed to love me and was told everybody she did, she would call the house and she'd talk. My wife would answer the phone. She'd ask Becky how she's feeling. And then immediately was, tell me about Travis.
Yeah.
And then they'd talk for 15, 20 minutes. And she'd say, well, tell Michael I'll call him later.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm your son. What do you mean? That went on for like 9 months. I never talked to my mom. She just wanted to know that Becky and Travis were okay.
Yeah. No, same thing. We have our children are the first grandchildren of all three grandparents. So yeah.
Oh, they're spoiled.
Same dynamic.
And the other advice I give new parents is don't buy your kid anything for 2 years because the grandparents will take care of it.
Oh yeah.
We made that mistake, and that was.
We have a big community of hand-me-downs and things like that. So we
Yeah.
have plenty of junk in the house.
Yeah, because at 1 year old, he just wants a box and some wrapping paper, right?
Yeah.
Or the
Maybe
wrapping
a
paper
water bottle.
roll. Yeah, he'll hit somebody. Yeah, hit himself with it
Yeah.
too. That's funny. Yeah, we do learn that. Any pets in the house?
No pets. I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
We love animals, but I think let the kids grow up a little bit more.
Is your
Although
daughter-
now our 4-year-old she wants a pet.
she make
Yeah.
a noise?
Yeah.
What does she want?
I don't know. We mostly see dogs, I think. Some dogs are on her mind,
Okay.
but she could go either way, I think.
Yeah. And when they promise to take care of it, you get suckered into that
Yeah.
too, right? Hobbies and activities of interest for you and the family.
Like to be outdoors when we can, as much as we can. Ride bicycles, go hiking. My folks live up in the mountains, so we get there when we can. Heading there later this week for the 4th of July.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Swimming.
Right.
Yeah.
You and your wife, when you get your own downtime, do you two do the same thing together? Or
No. Yeah. So sometime after having the second child, we started to structure in time for each other, for ourselves. And she uses her time to meet friends. She's an extrovert and I'm an introvert. So I use my time to maybe to read, to get out of the house.
What does Kobe do?
Is for work?
Yeah.
She is starting a new career today.
Oh.
About an hour ago. She started massage school.
Oh, nice.
But she's has a background in public health. I mentioned she was in Atlanta for the Centers for Disease Control. She has an master's in public health. But in 6 months, we expect she'll be a licensed massage therapist.
Nice.
And I'm trying to get her out to BNI when that happens too.
Oh, you have to. Yeah. I've been battling with a bad back for, I think this goes back to like 96 when we were living in Daytona. No, 2006, maybe 2005. And we were living in Daytona, and we had 1 year where 3 hurricanes just within a week of each other, 2 weeks of each other came almost right over Daytona. So my neighbor and I thought, well, we'll help each other board each other's house up. And from that day, so
you know exactly what.
Once I finally found a licensed massage therapist,
really made a difference.
I got range of motion back that I never had.
Wow.
So she's gonna do a lot of good work for
Good,
people.
yeah.
But I tell people, don't wait 10 years to go see a licensed massage therapist and a chiropractor. Don't wait 10 years. Get out there quick. So, and at the time I was a semi-athlete. So now I'm a little older semi-athlete. So it did bother my tennis game and my golf game. I will say that. So. Something no one knows about you. Now, some people are getting to know you. By the end of the hour, they'll know you even better. But what don't we know about you yet?
I am proud that I've hiked every mountain in North Carolina, in the Southeast, higher than 6,000 feet. And
Really?
Yeah, I have a special patch to prove it. And 39 of those mountains are in North Carolina or on the North Carolina-Tennessee border, and one is in Tennessee.
How'd you get time?
Yeah. Well, this is before kids. Yeah.
Okay. Does your wife hike?
Yeah.
Okay.
She did some of those hikes with me.
There's 39 that are over 6,000 feet.
In fact, these are all that are east of the Mississippi. There's only one up in New England, which is Mount Washington. And all the rest are down here in our state, North Carolina,
Really?
except for the one in Tennessee.
How do you get a pass?
The Carolina Mountain Club.
I envision
hands them
some
out.
guy at the very top.
No,
handing out
it's
pens.
honor system. But if you keep a good record of them when you do it and the ascent that you made and all that, send it in. They'll give you a patch.
What's the one you haven't climbed?
No, I've done them all.
You did them all?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I meant that all of the highest mountains east of the Mississippi are in the southeast.
Oh,
People
okay,
think
gotcha.
the mountains up north are a little bit more exposed, and maybe I'm not even sure have a higher elevation from base to summit.
Yeah.
But in terms of pure sea level elevation, all the big ones are down here.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay. So what's the next one on the list?
yeah, maybe Everest,
You're gonna be one of
Western.
those people. I've been reading these stories about the Himalayan mountains that people are just flocking there and just kind of
Right, yeah.
ruining it.
No, I'm not gonna be one of those people.
Okay.
I'd like to get into more paddling actually and learn more about North Carolina rivers,
Oh, okay.
which I haven't done very much of.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need a paddle boat for 4 now, right? Or a
Yeah,
kayak
yeah,
for
that's right.
4.
It's harder to well, maybe hard to do that.
Little one up front, then the wife, then the
Yeah,
other one, you in the back anchoring and steering.
yeah.
I can see it. I do want that picture on your Facebook page, okay?
Okay.
That's pretty impressive though. When was the last one that you finished
It would have
or you
been
completed?
2013. I nearly didn't come out of the woods that time. Almost got really lost, but I was hiking with my father. So I say it would have been 2013 because I made a goal to wrap him up. No, 2014. Wrap him up before my daughter was born.
Okay.
She was
All right.
born January 2015. So most of them are day hikes. You can hike
Okay.
up and down, and even do a couple on a single hike. But
Oh,
uh, I went into the Smokies. The big ones are in the Smokies, and those are far apart from each other and far from the trailhead. So you must camp out to hit those. And I went once some years ago with my to-be wife, and we didn't give ourselves enough time, and we hit about half of those we wanted to hit. So when my wife was pregnant, I asked my dad to knock out the last 4 or 5 with me in the Smokies, and I remember and there aren't trails there too necessarily. Some of them have trails, but
naturally.
yeah, some of
Yeah.
them you just have to carry an altimeter or your phone and know when you're at the right elevation. It's also not clear when you're at the top really because you're surrounded by trees and it's ambiguous.
Is the goal just to get past the 6,000-foot mark or to actually get to the
To
top?
get to the top, yeah, to get to the top, the
Okay.
highest elevation peak. And if you're, some people say if you're within the ring, the contour ring, that's close enough to count for that. Because you would
Right.
think it's obvious, but it's often not
One
in the
would,
middle of the
yeah.
woods and there aren't necessarily vistas. So, yeah,
Which is a bigger concern, getting lost or any animals in the area?
I never had an animal issue. So
Okay.
getting
Getting
lost, yeah.
lost.
I remember my dad was speaking about some German movie, and I finally said, Dad, I think we're about to be really lost. Let's focus not on the movie that you want to tell me about, but on, on our elevation.
Another good question we have, which is my favorite, is previous types of jobs. And I always tell
Oh,
people,
yeah.
I got your work history from college. Not
Okay.
interested in that yet. I want that high school job.
Okay.
That in college job that's memorable that you don't mind falling on your own sword to tell.
Yeah, well, I think my first job was sort of a maintenance guy, if I could say that, odd job guy. I painted a fence. I remember painting a
All
fence.
right.
That was the first day of the first job. Um, High school jobs, I worked on a trout farm in high school up in Western North Carolina and did odd things there. Um,
A trout farm.
yeah, trout farm.
Were you a tour guide or something?
No, I fed the trout, and I started every day by picking up the dead trout from the raceways. We had these
Oh,
descending waterfall sort of stream mimicry kind of
okay.
things. Feeding them, doing simple construction around the farm, passing them from one raceway to another.
Yeah.
I think
Is this family farm?
family friends farm.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. What was the pay rate back then?
Oh man, I don't know, but it was nothing special. Yeah, that was a high
That's
school
what I've
job.
learned from people. Either they quote me the price and say,
Yeah.
I thought I was the richest person in the
Yeah, it
world,
was
or
one of
"Yeah, I
those.
don't really remember.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah.
We are here with Jeff Austin, law offices of Jeffrey L. Austin. Triangle BNI is brought to you by Oak City Tech. They partner with their clients to give them a competitive edge with web design and logo design. They increase brand awareness and generate leads with SEO and social media work. And they nurture and convert leads with content creation and email marketing. Go to oakcitytechnology.com, ask for Drago, talk to him, and he will help you out a bunch. I know he's helped me with the things I'm doing, so we are glad to have him on, Oak City Tech on as the sponsor for the show. All right, Jeff. So you have to be you mentioned reading earlier. So I know you have to read a lot. You got to
Hmm.
know a lot.
Hmm.
What do we, let's go in our education mode here for a minute. We'll back up to how you kind of got here.
Okay.
What do we not know that I'm 58?
Mm.
once you get to 4, just thinking about your parents, we'll go backwards to the kids and grandkids,
Mhm.
but just thinking about the parents, when's kind of the first thing we need to ask them, "Hey, do you have this in order?" Or what's I know way early on is the best answer, but that's not gonna happen for
Yeah.
people.
Uh, what's the moment that makes you think that? Well,
Yeah,
when you're
that's
together and talking over Thanksgiving or whatever it may be, start those conversations in an easy way first before you need to have the difficult conversations. So start laying the groundwork as you can to say, "Mom and Dad, do you have powers of attorney in place? Have you decided who can make decisions for you when you're not in a position to do those for yourself? And do you have a will in place?" I Many people know that already, but many people
yeah.
don't, and don't even want to talk that way. So it's having it in a non-threatening way before there's reason for someone to think, "Oh, he's asking me this because I'm showing signs of decline."
Yeah.
Ask before that. So it's just about proper planning and care and responsibility
And I
that's
know
driving the
every
conversation.
family's different because my brother was the, executor for both of our folks,
Hmm.
and I told him, "I'm just gonna I'm gonna sell him to everybody because he did such a wonderful job." That's not an easy job to
No.
do.
Yeah.
You have to have you gotta be kinda buttoned up on details and
Yep.
willing to do some research and everything.
Yeah.
So how if you've got 3 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids, or even 2, I mean, how do you decide that if you're the kids?
Yeah. This about who should play those
Yeah,
roles and
be the
everything.
executor.
Yeah. Well, a couple things to think through, and it's a good question. I like making these decisions is oftentimes what keeps people from proceeding to make a plan, and it's less has to do with who gets my silverware or that kind of thing than about who should be my executor, who should be my healthcare agent, who should take care of my finances when I'm alive and able to do that. So oftentimes I find my service is being the sounding board to bounce these kinds of questions off with a client so that they can move past that stumbling block and that hurdle and move forward and make some decisions. So um it's best to choose an individual, and it's not always mandatory. People sometimes do choose both children to make these decisions, and we don't always advise that. And when we do allow two people to serve as an executor or in another role, of course, I want to have the conversation with the client that they are prepared and that their children are prepared to cooperate around these kinds of things and meet deadlines together and make decisions together because that shouldn't be assumed that people can cooperate and want to cooperate like that.
You can have
Mhm.
co-executors?
Yep. And
Boy, that's a slippery
it
slope, isn't
is,
it?
yeah. And I really talk through that, but I try to steer the client toward choosing one or the other. So if it's a question of of hurt feelings, there are a couple of ways to do that. I mean, sometimes if you have adult children, there's one adult child who's better suited to the healthcare decision making, another one who's better at meeting deadlines around turning in an accounting to the courthouse of estate funds or something like that. So it could be that there's a natural division of labor that can be. I had a client who had this is exactly her thinking. She had 3 children, adult children, and she wanted one in each of these roles of executor of her estate after she had died, of her financial agent while she's alive, but supposing she wasn't able to, and her healthcare agent. If
Oh.
she, yeah, and she's of the healthcare agent, she said like yeah, he has a hard time meeting deadlines, but if it comes to pulling the plug, like he'll have to make a decision then. So,
Alright.
and she trusted him, of course. So,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
that's good. Is there a separate form for each of these or
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
So, like, as a typical estate planning package for my clients, it includes a healthcare agent form, a financial power of attorney, sometimes called general power of attorney, and a will, and then a living will for end of life preferences and a HIPAA authorization.
Again, we that's just not a comfortable thing for anybody to do, either making those decisions for your parents or
Hmm.
starting out as you and your wife have. You've
Hmm.
got it all right now, and you better have your stuff in order. If you're a lawyer
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this, your
I did
stuff
that.
better be immaculate.
We did that the day we were married, right there in the wedding venue. We signed our wills, and I wasn't even in
That's
estate
right, I remember
planning.
the
Yeah.
story. Okay, alright.
Well, I wasn't an estate planning attorney yet, although I was a lawyer, but maybe that was a sign of what was to come. But that was not for me. That was just about building our lives together in another sense, and making plans together and putting it on paper in as many ways as
Yeah.
possible.
Oh, I hear
Yeah.
you on that. Your Before your daughter was born,
Hmm.
is that or before your first child is born or
Hmm.
any child is born, that's the best time to put in writing, "Okay, if something happens to us, this is who gets the kid or kids.
Right, and that's what a will does. You can name a guardianship preference for your minor children in a will, and people have a sense of the importance of that, although they don't always know that a will is what does that. So a will is not just about naming what happens to your money and your things in your house, but also about some intangible things like that. So yeah, everybody should have that. That's a guidance for the court to consider if the worst case happens as to who should raise your children for the rest of their life or till their turn
Yeah, because the
majority.
last thing you want, we've heard, I know you've heard horror stories. The
Yeah.
book, God, the book you could write, but we'll get
Yeah.
to that another show. But I know you've seen horror stories about that not being done, and then the
Hmm.
court probably is thinking they're doing the right thing, but they don't know the players in all
Right,
this.
right. And there will be a hearing and allowing anybody to come and make a case. But I part of what I do is represent parties to hearings like that. And it's just a shame that that the deceased parent hasn't had a chance to make a preference known. So I was in one in which the parents had divorced at that time, and the minor child, who was 16 or something, so nearly an adult, had inherited her father's everything he left was to her, and the mother was alive, and of course she took legal custody of the child. That there was no question about that. But who was to manage the money and the assets that the father had left to her, and that's where the battle played out. And um, it clearly belonged to the daughter, but there was an aunt in the picture and the mother, and nobody knew what he would have wanted in that case, and so it had to be
Yeah.
play out publicly like that.
Yeah, and a lot of that is, yeah, I hate to say it this way, but it's like little league sports, man. You get the parents involved, it
Oh
just
yeah,
ruins everything
yeah,
because they'll probably try to look you in the eye and go, "No, I really do have the best interest of the kid at heart." They really don't. There's
hmm,
a ulterior motive.
right.
And lately, I've been seeing now that I've been a grandparent for 11 months. I'm meeting people, the grandparents that got custody of their grandkids.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that happened so much.
Yeah, certainly. It could be grandparents. Other people named, family friends named in the documents. Uh, other family things like that.
Yeah. Do
Yeah,
they have, and that could change, right?
yeah,
Because a lot of people, I would imagine, you fill out a will when you're 24, and you might want to revisit that every now and then
right. Yeah,
because life
life
changes.
changes. Yeah, and if you're talking about minor children too, the person you trust to raise the children may not be the person you want controlling all the funds that a child has inherited all at once. So you
Oh,
can use
okay.
trust planning to um, create an allowance for the children each month or each quarter or each
Oh,
year, and then but have somebody else manage those funds responsibly over a longer time horizon. So trust planning accomplishes something like that.
okay. Yeah. You have an undergrad from Brown.
Hmm.
How do you get from the hills of North Carolina to Brown
Well,
University?
my family is in North Carolina, but I grew up in Atlanta and wanted to go far away from home. So
Should
uh,
we read into that?
I just grew up a lot, and I spent a lot of time in Western North Carolina as a child. My mother's family is there, but I wanted to see a different part of the country.
Okay.
So Rhode Island was. I didn't go West Coast, anything like that. That was off my radar. But
What else was on the list other than Brown?
um, Vassar was on the list. Tufts University. I think I
Dang.
applied to University of Georgia. I applied to University of North Carolina. I wasn't in state. I wasn't
Yeah.
accepted. But I had a wonderful experience at Brown, and
Okay.
made my best friends there, and was at a wedding of one of them last weekend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, great place.
Well, you and I have something in common. I too did not get into UNC when I
Okay.
applied, but I think it's for different
Yeah.
reasons. They UNC, like my parents, were not happy with my SAT score.
Yeah.
I think that's why I didn't get in. But
Well, that
again,
may be why.
we'll
Yeah.
just say that we share, me and
Yeah.
a
Sure.
lawyer share both getting turned
Yeah.
out from Carolina, which is good because I ended up in Tennessee much happier. So
Yeah.
anyway, and then you went on
My
to
wife went to UNC, by the way, so
okay.
she's able to lord that over me
Oh,
when,
that
when
she
she
got
wants
in,
to.
you
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right. That'll go forever, won't it? Now, will either of your kids be allowed to go to state?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
You
Well, yeah,
recommend
easy
it?
for you to
Yeah.
say. Yeah. Wait till
Okay.
wait till Kobe gets in law. And then you went to Georgia State for law. And I have to
Mhm.
say up front, my oldest son went to Georgia Southern.
Okay.
So because of that, we don't think much of Georgia State, but I
Oh,
know it's
yeah.
a good school.
Yeah.
So why come back down for law school there?
Um, I suppose, wanted to be back in Atlanta, and it was a great school, and I just had a wonderful experience there. Yeah.
And that school's
I made,
grown too,
yeah.
hadn't it?
Yeah, it's grown. The university as a whole has really reshaped a lot of downtown Atlanta.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember that. We lived in Atlanta for what were we there? 2000, I can't remember dates now.
Okay.
2000, no, 80,
Oh, oh,
93 to 99. There we go. I
okay.
knew I'd get one of the
Somewhere.
decades right. Yes, eventually. So, yeah.
Oh, you were there for the Olympics then?
I was, yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
had a
I
blast
was
there,
in
yeah.
I was in high
My
school.
wife and her sister had just left Centennial Park about an hour
Oh, yeah.
before the shooting
You're
happened,
right, right.
and they weren't
The
home
bombing.
yet. And I'm like, so I'm calling them on the phone. I'm
Yeah, that
glad
was
they were on the
rough.
bus driving head back home. So one of the things you do, we're here with Jeff Austin, law offices of Jeffrey L. Austin. You can get him at 919-937-2737. I don't ever want to send somebody to a website to do a will. I'd rather them call you
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's probably many questions. But if somebody wanted a simple one early on, they could do that and you'd be mostly okay with them doing that. Does it serve its
Hmm.
purpose? Let's say that.
I wouldn't say that for a will. I mean, perhaps. I said that a little bit earlier in the show about powers of attorney
Yeah.
because I think it's the North Carolina Medical Society believes there's a public interest in people having these documents filled out. So there's standard templates for that based on language in our laws, our statutes. Likewise with the general power of attorney to let someone make financial decisions for you when you're not able to. Wills are a different level. There are some tools out there that are good in some cases, but there's so many issues of state law that play in the background that affect the decisions people make. That's sort of what my grandfather's story was about.
Yeah,
If
we
this
can
is
go
the
into
time
that.
for
Yeah, go
that,
ahead. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Wonderful story on how you think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. This is a family story of my grandfather, who I never met because he died when my mother and uncles, my mother's brothers, were children. He lived up in Asheville, was a banker, and as the banker in my BNI group says, oh, he knew just enough to get himself in trouble with
I can
estate
see Jeff
planning.
saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he worked for Wachovia and wrote his own will, and it was a one-page will about 4 sentences long, leaving everything to his wife, and it couldn't be a more simple will.
And
So,
what year was this roughly? We think.
oh, this was 51.
Okay, so back then it was
Yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
here's okay.
So you would think nothing could possibly go wrong with a will
Yeah.
like that, and there was no issue in the family either that ever posed a problem. But my mother was a young little girl then, and at the time he wrote it, my grandmother was pregnant with my first uncle, my elder uncle, and so my grandfather signed the will, having one child out of the womb, one in the womb, and then one came. My other uncle came along later, some couple of years later. But there was and is a provision in North Carolina law that said that um, if if someone dies with a will and leaves minor children and leaves nothing to the children, then they should inherit. The children should inherit something anyway. The idea is that, and the same is true of a spouse, a surviving spouse. But the idea is it's a public policy interest that children should not be um, left out on the street. The children need something to live off of, and you can assume that the surviving parent will provide for them, but that's not always a safe assumption. It could be that it's there are no surviving parents, or that the parents have separated, or it's a child from a prior marriage. So that is a public policy, and that played into my grandfather's situation. So a strict application of that law to my grandfather's will had my two uncles inheriting something, and my mother not, because she was born but not named in the will. Um, so by the terms of the will, my grandmother got everything. By the terms of the laws, my uncles got something, and by terms of the law, my mother got nothing. So um, again, there was no issue in my family. My grandmother was their parent and was of all three of them, and was happy to support them all. But the court decided the guardians ad litem needed to be appointed, and they took it as their duty to represent their clients' interests in the best way that they could. And it was eventually appealed to the North Carolina Supreme Court, and took a couple of years. A lot of money that was paid from my grandfather's estate to pay the guardians ad litem and the attorneys and all the costs of litigation. And so I took a particular interest in this as the attorney in the family when
Mhm.
I found out about it a couple years ago, and did some of the legal research on it and found the opinion, and also found in the state archives in Raleigh the original of the will itself, the one page handwritten will,
Oh, very nice.
and all the affidavits from all parties and the guardians and whatnot. So he could not have known that this law would absolutely mess up his entire estate plan,
Yeah.
and it was the simplest estate plan, the simplest family situation you could possibly imagine. So that's the lesson that the lesson I take away from that is that there are underlying unknown issues of state law that play into your estate plan, and that a North Carolina attorney um, is the best safeguard against managing that kind of risk.
So 2 questions. The first one is, why were your uncles one of your uncles wasn't even born yet, right?
They weren't born when the will was signed.
How
They were
did
born when he
they
died. He died like 10 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, after he signed his will.
Again, I'm just not having a legal mind
Yeah,
or being an SEC grad. It's one or
yeah,
the other. I don't know why I can't grasp this. But your mother was there first when your dad was alive, signed the will,
grandfather.
and died, or
Yeah.
grandfather, and died. And I just don't know how, if she's there first, how the other 2 benefited from that and she
Yeah, it,
didn't.
it was this is the way our common law system works, is that laws are written and that there are unintended consequences sometimes, and that those are resolved through court opinion. And so my family was just caught right at the wrong time, and it had to be resolved by a court, and appealed to get to that decision. So it was unfortunate, but that's what our courts do, is resolve inconsistencies of the law.
Knowing what, if you could talk to him today,
Yeah,
back in the day, and he's
yeah,
like, if he would have just put in such goes to my wife, such and such goes to any current or future kids,
yeah.
would that have solved
Or
it?
even that any children I have or may have, I trust my wife to manage, to take care of, including future children. That would be an important part of it.
Because
Yeah,
everybody just assumes if one spouse dies, the other spouse gets everything
right.
and would rightly look after the
Yeah,
kids, right?
right. Well, no, and that's not true. Whether even if you die without a will, the children will inherit, and there will need to be a guardian appointed for them. And if you die with a will, and there are afterborn children, like my uncles, children born after the will is signed, then they
Wow.
stand to inherit, unless there's language in the will that is persuasive upon the court that that wasn't what the decedent intended.
But the outcome was what he intended eventually.
Well, no, I mean the last line of that court opinion was, we enter a decision. We, the Supreme Court of North Carolina, enter a decision that provides for the 2 boys, but leaves Anne unprovided for. Anne is my mother, and we trust that her mother will take care of her best she can. So,
Oh,
and that was what happened. And but no, it wasn't what my grandfather would have planned.
no, and then when you get now, obviously today there's way more blended families,
Right? Sure.
and that skews because we've heard stories of it just from a husband standpoint, leaving, gets remarried and leaves most everything to the current wife, not the first wife,
Right.
and the mother of the kids,
Right.
and then that can mess up everything, can it?
Right. I was mentioning something like this on in BNI the other day, and about uh, prenuptial or premarital agreements, and a spouse has even more rights than a child to an estate. So if there's a blended family situation, and I was working with one like this, if the surviving spouse wants to waive the right to inherit, there must be a premarital or postmarital agreement that does that. It's not enough just to write a will that leaves everything to the child from the first marriage. So premarital agreements are not just about not trusting your spouse. In the case of divorce, it's an estate planning tool too, in the right
Man,
circumstances.
Amnon, you got a question?
So, is anybody working on changing the name of that document?
The name of which document? Like in my grandfather's situation?
A will. It's not a will anymore.
Oh yeah.
You are trumping my will. I mean, that was my will. Don't change
Yeah.
it. It's
Yeah,
my will.
Yeah,
So
I see
it's
the
not
point.
a will
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. But I suppose that the idea is that there's a public policy interest in providing for young children and making sure they're prepared for, and there are unintended consequences, and so those have to be resolved somehow. And in this particular example, there was the law was revised afterward to make it more clear that in a case like this, that wouldn't have to happen. But yeah, 'cause the body, yeah,
Somebody on that Supreme Court had to look at this, scratch their head, and go, "This is not right."
yeah,
Ugh,
yeah, I suppose.
no. Now, you are an appointed attorney, guardian ad litem through the Durham Public Defender Office.
Yes.
How often do you get called, and is there a commonality on when you get called in?
This is for allegedly incompetent adults who are in a guardianship proceeding to have a guardian appointed over them. So it happens to me a few times a year. Um, and I represent parties too who are seeking guardianship of an adult, perhaps someone's parent. And sometimes I represent the, sometimes an adult hires me to defend against a proceeding like this. So an elderly person's adult child is seeking guardianship over her or him, and they want an attorney in there on his or her side. And then sometimes, as what you mentioned, the public defender appoints me to represent as guardian ad litem that adult and both report to the court on the best interests of that adult and also represent the adult's wishes to the court. And so it requires a little bit of, it's a bit of a job of social work.
Yeah.
It requires getting a grip on the family, understanding, first of all, does this person need a guardian? Are the faculties such that he or she can make decisions and take care of himself? And then who is the best person to do that? And hopefully it's family. There's a strong preference for family in law and in practice. But sometimes it's social services, the public guardian, when there's no family that's capable of doing it.
And on the adult incompetency part of it, are you called in usually by the kids or by the parent?
Um, Usually by the kids. So
Okay.
either the court appoints me to represent the parent, the adult, or an adult child hires me to initiate the proceeding against the adult.
And the court calls you in when nobody can decide what to do?
No, any times that an allegation is of guardianship is brought in court, that by law the adult, the respondent, has the right to be appointed a guardian ad litem. So anybody could start this proceeding
Okay.
against you, Mike, and say, he has dementia, he doesn't know what's going
Okay.
on Monday from Sunday, and um, he needs me to be his legal guardian. So anyone can do that.
Even if my wife is still living and
Yeah,
she's fine?
anyone can do it. I mean,
Really?
that's what the process is for. But so anyone
Okay.
can start that, and you being aware, you would either show up in court and say this is baloney, or you would hire an attorney to help you. But whether or not you do either of those things, the court will appoint another attorney, someone like me, to to look at the whole thing from a bird's eye view and figure out what's really going on here.
Man.
And we read stories in the press. There are horror stories about that, and people get sucked down this rabbit hole, and it's sometimes a difficult decision. Sometimes it is, because people have the right to make bad decisions, and then there are people who are living as hoarders or whatever it may be, but they're exercising the rights they have, and doesn't mean that they every right that they have should be taken away from them and put with social services or whatever. So there are gray line situations there, and that's what requires a lot of thought and deliberation and consultation with all sides. But then oftentimes it's a family situation, and some adult children are just trying to do best and get the tools they need to make a good plan for their parent.
When somebody hears something, what what would they likely hear that would make them think, I better call a lawyer?
hmm Well, it's good when families are in touch with each other and in touch with all that each other trusts. So that if somebody has a banker or a financial advisor or a CPA who does taxes or a doctor, it's great when those people are able to talk to each other. So part of the planning ahead that I do is the paperwork that would allow me to talk to my parents' doctors. The
Okay.
doctor, of course, we have medical privacy, but I know that if I wanted to, I could call my mother or father's doctor, and they would be able to pick up answer the phone and talk to me and say, "Oh yeah, your mom's great," or "I've had concerns about your mother's memory loss for 6 months now." So it's good when these people are able to talk, and that the planning is in place to allow these people to talk, and not just professionals, but of course neighbors. And going back to my grandparents in Georgia, they had we were living different places in North Carolina mostly by this time, but they had a wonderful community on their block that we were in touch with, and they helped us
Okay.
know what was going on those years. So so I would say that. I mean, I guess your question is, when does it come to a lawyer? And
Yeah.
when it is such that Well, I should say you can avoid guardianship proceedings by planning ahead and having the proper powers of attorney and healthcare agents in place. That's what those documents do from a planning perspective. But if those aren't in place or someone's abusing them, somebody's using a power of attorney to commit elder abuse or fraud, that's when a guardianship hearing comes in. And if there's any hint of contention, family contention, or anything like that, then it will make sense to have a lawyer at your side to walk you through that process. But some people choose to go with that one.
Which is scary. I know, and we're going to get
Yeah.
into a couple more things here. I'd like to welcome our new title sponsor on the show, Oak City Technology. They will power your goals with proven technologies for increasing traffic, leads, and sales. Give Drago a call go see him at oakcitytechnology.com. He will help you out a bunch. We are glad to have him on the show. All right, let's get to the important stuff here. Let's talk grandkids. Let's talk planning for grandkids and kids as well.
Okay.
When your daughter was born, what did you put in place for her?
Oh yeah. Guardianship designations, and we've touched on this already, but my wife and I wanted to know that our preference as to who should take care of our children would be heard in court if it ever comes to that. So I'm lucky that I have I'm an only child, but I have two wonderful brothers-in-law, and we talked to them about doing that, and they're named in our documents. My wife and I had the basic mirror image estate plan, everything to each other and to our children in the absence of each other. And we've done it the right way so that we know that'll happen and it won't be appealed. But at this point in life, we didn't feel any need for trust planning, but a lot of my clients want to plan through a trust so that children will inherit over a time frame and not inherit everything all at once when they turn 18. Yeah. So
and I'm working on that with Oliver. I want to set something up for my wife and I do. I should say that. I always say me and need to include her in this as well. We want to set up something for him. And in my mind, it's not, and somebody asked me about this, like, oh, so when he turns 18, you get this. I'm like, no, this is knucklehead money.
Yeah.
And his dad is responsible for his college.
Right.
I want this to be like the age of 25. Down payment on the house, something significant, start a business. I don't know how much is going to be in there by then, but we can set them up with verbiage like that as well.
Yep. You that's what you do with a trust. A will is a sort of a point in time, and a will creates an estate that closes after some months or maybe some years. But a trust can last over a much longer time frame, and so you need a trustee, someone you trust. Could be his parents, although. Yeah, it could be his parents or somebody else, some family, or could even be a corporate trustee. I was saying although because I was imagining the situation which your child had, God forbid, predeceased you. But I think you're saying you want to leave something for your grandchildren.
I do. Yeah.
The moment you're gone. So trust can do that. And again, there are issues that come into play, like when supposing you've planned well and a lot of your savings are in retirement assets. Those are tax advantaged retirement accounts, 401ks and IRAs, and that tax advantage requires that it be basically spent on you and your retirement and your wife and your retirement. But if you want to draw those assets out over a longer time frame, there's a certain kind of trust planning, which is see-through trust planning, that can do that. So those are the kinds of conversations that you want to have, and why just a simple will or a simple even trust may not do it for you, because you may find that the required minimum distributions of your retirement assets require that those are spit out much faster than you planned if you don't have the right kind of trust.
And I've told my son that I'm going to pay for what I want to pay for as a grandfather.
Sure.
I'm not going to pay.
You've earned it.
Of course, they have the college fund already, the 527 already set up and all
529.
that. 529, I'm not worried about that because they're making a whole lot more money what are they, 30? Are they both 32? And they're making way more money than my wife and I did when we were 32 and had two kids. So I'm not too worried about them. But I do want to, it has been a very interesting year plus just researching that and trying to figure out what and how and the language and everything. It's actually been kind of fun, but there's more to it. And you're right. If it's not buttoned up correctly, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you didn't put that he couldn't get it when he was 18.
Yeah.
And he wanted to blow it all in college, or God forbid a Trans Am with T-top and something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been dealing with people too who, their choice for trustee or guardian is somebody in another country. And I was talking to some clients who were, the wife was from Latin America and the husband is American. They're both American now. She's naturalized citizen. But her brother in Argentina was the best. They agreed the best person, but it's to raise their children if they're not able to. But it's likely that a court would hesitate to send an American citizen off to live with a citizen of another country
Oh,
in
didn't
another
think about
country.
that.
So
Okay.
um, it makes a lot of sense to them that the children would stay in the family, but it also that these are kind of things we got to think through and let them know about.
Yeah, and when Travis was born, so this would have been '86, and my wife's sister and her husband were getting married about 3 months after we were getting married, and my brother and sister and her brother at the time weren't married and weren't close to getting that, so we named her sister and husband, which we're fine to do, and to
Yeah,
this day, it was still the right decision, but sometimes if you're a young parent
yeah.
and nobody you're related of if your siblings aren't married, do the grandparents come into play sometimes?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, I mean, we of course we consider that, and just for the obvious reason of generation and who's going to be younger
Yeah.
and fit and around longer, we went with my brothers-in-law and in our generation. But we have three grandparents, or children have three grandparents who are, for now, ready to step in. But of course, that's a um,
Yeah.
facts and circumstances
Yeah.
decision based on what's going on in a particular family. And I have some documents that I share with people that help make that kind of decision and let people know what are the things they should be thinking through and talking through.
And going back to the adult incompetency, um, with everybody living longer, I mean,
Yeah.
this is big time in play
Oh
now
yeah.
because 20, 30 years ago, we're not, what are people living to 70? Now everybody
Right.
you hear mid-80s and all
Right.
this stuff.
Yeah.
It's big time in play
Yeah.
now, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's that's why I feel privileged, if that's the word, to be working in an area of law that is just growing in importance as a societal challenge, and we see it happening around us in our own families, in our neighborhoods, and on our streets, and in our communities. And so, you know, having an eye on what's going to be changing there and how our legal tools evolve to that. And there's a lot of conversations too about reforming adult guardianship and making it better, making it honor people's
Yeah.
dignity and rights even more than it has in the past. And so I'm part of those conversations, and it's just more critical and more important.
And I'm sure you've run across people that are dying alone. And
Yeah,
that's just that's heartbreaking for a number of reasons, but when it
yeah,
comes to legal part of it, that can be messy, I bet. Just trying
yeah,
to figure things out, right?
yeah. And I come across that too in some of my volunteer work, working in assisted living facilities and nursing homes, and a lot of people there tell me that they don't see much of people, and they're
Yeah.
living there because that's where they are. Um, and then through the guardianship work, and when it's social services is named guardian, it's sometimes because there's nobody else that's willing or able to step in. That's tough to see.
Yeah, and I feel for people because my mom lived in one, unassisted I never can remember the name, but wasn't assisted living because she was fine
Oh
when she
yeah,
moved in.
independent living, or
Independent living,
yeah,
yeah. And there were people there that we kinda got to know and their kids just well, and sometimes the kids just don't live in the city or the
right,
state, and that
right,
just happens. But, I felt for some of the people there because it's like, family doesn't really come to visit anymore. It's
yeah.
like, oh.
And some of them are wonderful places too, and like absolutely a wonderful option for people.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I meet many people there who are very happy, and it's social. There's a community
Oh, my
there. It's
mom loved the place. Yeah,
yeah,
Brookhaven, she
yeah,
loved it.
yeah. There you
Yeah,
go. I mean, there's a lot of emphasis now on aging in place, which is wonderful. But for some people, being part of a community late in life is also
yeah,
really wonderful.
yeah,
But sometimes uh, it's sad to see that there's not
yeah, I feel
people
for
from
that.
before coming out.
I feel for that. So here we are again. We talked about earlier shows. This is July 1. What's on the plate for the rest of the year? Anything how often does your world change with focus or new laws or anything like that? Are you
It does change. And this morning I was reading about a law in Congress that's passed the U.S. House and may pass the Senate. It pertains to what we were talking about a moment ago in terms of putting retirement assets into
Mhm.
trust and that time frame, and how to spread your assets to, say, a grandchild over a long time frame, but also not running afoul of required minimum distributions. And so, without getting into the weeds of it, there's something called a beneficiary, a designated beneficiary, and that time frame might be sped up to 10 years. So, like in your case, without the proper planning, it could be that all of your retirement assets would be have to be spent out in 10 years after your death, and your death of your wife too.
Oh,
That may not be what you want for your grandchildren, right?
yeah.
You want that to be wait till they need a house
Yeah.
or a business or whatever. So
Can I assume that the laws that are being written for these are apolitical? Can we assume that the knuckleheads in
I think
DC
so.
aren't
Yeah.
messing this up?
Like this one is bipartisan. This one that just passed
Okay.
the House, and there are some other aspects in there that I was reading sort of a summary of it, and that there were some sweeteners for each side in there, and some things
Yeah.
the other side didn't really love. But I think the thrust of it, well, is a compromise bill, and that wasn't even necessarily on that point.
Did they get the intent of it correct?
I don't know. I mean, I think I, I don't. I think the idea around that one, the estate planning and elder law communities want to have more voice into that to make sure that it is worth it. I mean, I think that the idea there is around not deferring taxes and government revenue for too long, and so that's an intent that I can understand.
Okay.
But as with everything, there are sides to it that need to be considered.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the story with your grandfather, just some unintended
Right.
consequences you just don't, and you can't in a lot of these, you just can't see them coming,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, the best, that you do the right thing for the right reasons, and all of a
Right.
sudden it's like, yeah, we didn't think of that, or
Right.
something changes. So,
That one that I was reading it with care because I'm drafting a trust for a divorced woman now, and her children are children, minor children, and a lot of her savings are in retirement, and she wants if she dies and the children are inheriting her money, she wants it to be managed responsibly over a long time frame. So
Yeah.
it plays into grandparent situations and any parent situation, including a divorced parent situation.
yeah, well, good. Glad you're there to help folks.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed having you on the show today to learn a little bit more about this because it's important because it can get ugly fast, and you could work for a lifetime of acquiring all of this, and then if it's not filled out right, it can just go the wrong way quick.
Yeah,
can't it?
and throw your family into
Yeah.
disarray and confusion.
No, and I hate that for
argument.
families.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, but I'm glad you're involved in that, folks. If you have any issues on estate planning, elder law, or adult incompetency, please give Jeff a call, 919-937-2737. Go to, what's your website?
JeffAustinLaw.com.
All right, go there and learn a little bit more, and make sure you plan accordingly because it helps out everybody. We appreciate you joining us on Triangle BNI. We will see you next week with another wonderful small business success story.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.